Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and here we are reeling after the sudden and rather tragic death of Lisa Marie Presley and also Jeff Beck this week. We are trying to figure out who will complete the troika, but we must soldier on to other pressing news items. So begrudgingly, we will have to do that. But we have, of course, a panel that can discuss either narrative if we really want. We are joined this week by former Michigan Republican Party Chair Jeff Timmer. We have intrepid veteran journalist Nancy Derringer. And of course, we have co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel.
Okay.
So and we're waiting on a fifth.
We're waiting on a fifth.
Wiley.
Yeah, and we'll see.
Moving past the necro grief, I suppose we need to then consider what's happening with classified documents. This is really up there on a bullet, and we've got video.
Why does Trump think they should raid the White House? If there's anywhere classified documents should be, it's the White House.
Next to your Corvette, what were you thinking?
I'm going to get a chance to speak on all this, God willing, soon. But as I said earlier this week, people, and by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage. Okay, so it's not like you're sitting out in the street.
So the material was in a locked garage?
Yes, as well as my Corvette.
He's super proud of that Corvette, isn't he? You know, I have a Corvette. I don't know. It's like we have a President Burt Reynolds all of a sudden. Which is more dangerous, Joe Biden having classified documents in his garage or Joe Biden having the keys to a Corvette?
That's a good point. I never thought of that. I don't know how many 80-year-olds should be, or 79-year-olds should be driving a Corvette anyway. But okay.
Well, first of all, a point of clarification. Burt Reynolds immortalized not a Corvette, but a Pontiac Trans Am in Smokey and the Bandit. So Jimmy Kimmel really needs to watch some movies again. Or come to Detroit and we will give him a very quick tutorial on car models. So, Jeff, what's going on with the classified documents with Biden, and is this really going to then sting him?
No, I mean, we have an apples to rutabagas kind of situation here. It's like, okay, Joe Biden's at Meijer and he's walking out in his cart and something dings, at the door. There was an item in the bottom that he forgot to pay for. He turns around and goes back and pays for it. Trump's walking out of Meijer. The door, the buzzer dings at the door. He rushes to his car and drives away.
Which might be a Corvette.
Maybe you're not a Corvette, but at the very surface level, and because we live in the dumbest of times, this looks like there's an equation between the two cases. But there wasn't like the National Archives and the Department of Justice were on Biden's ass for more than a year saying, give the documents back, give the documents back. And Biden was saying, I don't have them. And they're saying, yes, you do. Yes, you do. And then they finally had to raid his garage next to the Corvette and find the documents. They found them themselves. They gave them back. I mean, the question I guess somebody ought to ask is, why do we have classified documents that are this easy to walk away with? I think it's the crime isn't that they had classified documents. It appears that when you're dealing with hundreds of thousands or millions of documents, it's too easy for people to throw shit in a box and take it with them after they leave. The question becomes, what do you do with it when it's discovered and give it and you're asked to give it back? But because we live in a time where facts like this don't matter, this is going to be seen as a political problem for Biden. It was very smart politically that Merrick Garland jumped out and appointed the special prosecutor right away. It really makes me wonder why it took him 2 freaking years to do it with Donald Trump. And there's still no accountability from anything Trump did trying to overthrow the government in a free and fair election.
Yeah.
By the way, just one point. I mean, for those of you in our listening audience outside Michigan, and if you want to know what a rutabaga or Meijer is, we'll go ahead and let you know later, because that was one of the most provincial assessments I've ever heard. But thank you, Jeff. Okay, Nancy.
Hyperlocalization. I agree with everything Jeff said. I mean, it's one thing to say for the National Archives to be calling you and saying you have classified documents, bring them back. And another thing entirely to say, oops, we just opened a banker's box and found a document with classified markings. We'd better give it back. I mean, those are two completely different things. I do I guess I'm kind of interested in, maybe Lengel, you covered federal law enforcement. I mean, what is the threshold for marking something classified or highly classified? I know there are degrees of classification. There's like classified, highly classified, et cetera. But I'm just wondering, like, what is, they must
how
have.
I mean, there's some kind of standard. Although I have a funny story. When I did an internship with Jack Anderson, the investigative columnist in '82, they had this scandalous reporter working there who was a good reporter, but he would sometimes be talking to a source and he'd say, "Okay, do you have that in writing? Could you put a note on that?" And then he'd say, "Could you stamp that top secret?"
So that he could then report according to Cross.
I think there's a lot of wiggle room in terms of how things are classified. I mean, some things are obvious, like, but I think there's different judgments on that. I was going to say, it's interesting. The Fox News can't have it both ways. Either Joe Biden is just this ditzy, absent-minded guy. How can you blame him? He had a couple documents. Or he's a sinister, sneaky
Dr.
guy.
Evil. Yeah.
I think the whole, I think every president's got to have a little scandal. This is a mini scandal, I think. I think it's, the Republicans are going to, they've had such a shitty time with the election, with the Speaker of the House, with George Santos. They're just like, manna from heaven. Thank you so much. But I think it's going to blow off. And really, it comes down to criminal intent. And
Right.
and we're clear that Trump has criminal intent. When you get a subpoena, when you say all the documents have been returned, I don't know how the Secret Service works with the FBI, but I'm going to guess there's some cooperation there. The Secret Service guys are over at Mar-a-Lago. They must have seen boxes and said, "Hey, there's still some boxes over here." Did
you hear? I was scrolling through the headlines this morning and I saw that I think it was Fox. It was some right-wing news source was saying Hunter Biden has access to the locked garage where the Corvette and the documents are. So they're already trying to drag him into this. So
he was having cocktail parties for the Chinese delegation in the garage.
In the garage, right? Exactly. But I don't know. I kind of am. I agree with everything that Jeff said, and then it just seems like we heard a lot about the president's daily brief during the Trump administration. And there was I just wonder, it's a multi-page document. I believe it's completely now delivered via iPad. But we all heard about how Trump had absolutely no patience for the written word, and there had to be pictures and graphics, or else he couldn't absorb it. And I have to wonder, like, what the, if there's a page of the president's daily brief that says, "Happy birthday, Joe Biden." And then another page of the daily brief says, North Korean missiles are, we screwed up another software set on the North Korean missiles. If Joe Biden decides to keep the page that says happy birthday to him, if it's some, major thing, I don't know. I knew somebody who actually worked on the PDB, or at least the president's news roundup in the White House as an intern many years ago, but that's about the extent of my knowledge.
Well, Trump had it made into a 2-ply, didn't he? Made it, I think, a little bit easier to flush.
We're already making the mistake. It wasn't Trump in classified materials so much as it was Trump in any materials that belonged to the National Archives. It wasn't just classified materials. It was like, you have a bunch of materials, classified or not, that you're not entitled to have. You need to give them back. And so we've kind of the spin has become, this is about classified documents, but it's not. It's just about possessing anything that doesn't belong to you, that belongs to the people.
Hey, and we're joined by former Duggan Chief of Staff and also PR Specialist Alexis Wiley. Welcome to the show. And we had a message from a longtime viewer, Ann Farrell, asking for a friend whether the documents constitute a shanda. If you don't mind, Allan, I'm going to step in here, given my expertise of Yiddish, and say documents themselves can't be a shanda. I would suspect inanimate objects can't be a shanda. It has to be a real person. But I need a Talmudic ruling on that.
Well, all right, in a very specific way, but I'm no Talmudic expert. But
okay. Hey, I think we actually have a minority Jewish presence on the show today. We usually have at least one or two other Jewish lawyers. So that's a Shonda. So,
it's a Shonda, right?
I actually, Nancy, I converted Sunday, so sorry, just went through. Alexis, the classified document scandal, plurals. What do you see going on, and how bad is this going to be for Biden?
I don't know. I think the first hit felt like no big deal. Then I think, now they were in the garage. I think it's hard to tell. I mean, he also has not been a jerk about it, right? He's been cooperating. He's been very, seems like he's been an adult and a leader about it. So hopefully my hope is it goes away, but who the heck knows? I just think this is just so the bizarre kind of rabbit hole that appears that we're in and tumbling down. So, we'll see what happens.
So there's the expected piranhas in the Amazon frenzy going on the right. But what about now some Democrats coming out and trying to put distance, saying, oh man, this is reason why he shouldn't run in 24?
100%. I 100% see that happening. I could see people who have some aspirations kind of, licking their chops and probably privately stoking the flames around this. I could see that happening. But, he's just I think Joe Biden, to me, is just so good at weathering all of the things that have come. And I think that I believe that this will, pass, but we'll see.
I think it's a minor thing. I wonder, the Hunter Biden stuff, if anything comes up that might look bad for Joe Biden. But that's something more significant, and there may be nothing there. There may be something there, but this is such a minor. Every president deals with some kind of scandal. This is on the level of very, very minor.
Yeah, but Allan, I get it's not something major like a khaki suit that Obama was wearing, but you got to think that this is something that's going to have legs. Well, so here on a tangent, since it did happen this week, and by the way, somebody contacted me and said that when we were mentioning prospective Senate candidates to fill the Stabenow seat, we didn't mention one of Michigan's most recent residents, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. Did we mention Pete? I thought maybe we did.
I think we did. Yeah.
Well, then that's a Shonda of the person who said that. But anyways, the FAA had a major computer meltdown, which caused a ground stop, really the first comprehensive one in the United States since 9/11. Between that and the issues with the airlines over Christmas, are these going to be something that stick to Buttigieg in case he has greater office aspirations?
I would say it depends on how he reacts to it, because these appointed positions, you try to get up to speed as quickly as possible, but I can't imagine that anybody is fully versed in every single aspect of that job all the time. That's what you have deputies for. And, it depends on whether he knew ahead of time that the software was outdated and headed for collapse, or it was a database problem, right?
Well, they said that this morning on the news, they were saying that it was some contractors who introduced some corrupt coding or something. God. And so they don't know if it was by accident or if it was intentional, but whatever. Wow. So they're investigating that. But they're working to upgrade the system as well.
Well, I was going to say, if our digital infrastructure is anything like our physical infrastructure in this country, I think we need not just an infrastructure week, but I think we need an infrastructure decade maybe to bring all this stuff up to date. And I'm not just saying that because I'm taking a flight later this week. So
where are you going?
New York.
Ah,
yeah,
nice.
A little fun. So anyway, go ahead.
Well, don't take the train, because apparently Amtrak on the East Coast had a 37-hour delay.
Oh my God! Did you hear about the one that between like Dearborn and Chicago that took 20 hours, and people were jumping off the train?
That's fairly routine, unfortunately.
It is, and it's because they have to give way to freight trains from the CSX line. because they essentially borrow that or they lease that track, and they don't have any rights to any right of way on it. So, but no, that sounded like a absolute hellish experience. But
if ever there was a case for eminent domain or even inverse condemnation, I'm telling you, that's got to be it.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure Kevin McCarthy would probably be making much more political hay over Biden's woes, except he's, of course, still wiping the sweat from his brow over making it over the finish line and becoming Speaker of the House. It seems, after pretty much making every possible pledge and concession and Faustian bargain to do so. That seems to be now the case with the Rules Committee and some of the things that it has gone ahead and passed. What are some of the more interesting ones to those of you who've been keeping track of it?
Well, I think if anybody who remembers the movie Dirty Rotten Scoundrels,
yes,
with Michael Caine and Steve Martin, there's the point where they're going through one of their cons, and Michael Caine says to Steve Martin, he goes, "Ruprecht, do you want the genital cuff again?" I think that was the most interesting concession that Kevin had to make, is he's wearing the genital cuff and Marjorie Taylor Greene has the button.
What a great reference.
Really, that is good.
Yeah. Well, apparently the Gephardt rule has now gone the way of the dodo, which
refresh my memory. What's the Gephardt
so the Gephardt
rule?
rule was a way that it allowed the House to automatically send a measure extending the debt limit over to the Senate in adapting a budget resolution, and now it can sit there and be mired in the House of Representatives to seemingly interminable debate and discussion. So
wonderful. I can't wait for another debt ceiling debate. I just can't wait for it. I mean, it was so pleasant the last time, biting your nails down to the quick and wondering if the United States Congress was going to trigger an economic catastrophe. I mean, they don't even know what the debt ceiling really is, do they? I mean, some of the ones that, as Jeff likes to say, haven't figured out how to eat with a fork. So,
well, I mean, you're looking at what seems to be definitely a shrinking of oversight. It looks like some of the powers of some of the investigative committees are going to recede, and yet others are going to get a whole lot more, depending, of course, on who the targets for these things are. So I imagine the House Select Committee on Hunter Biden, which is yet to be named and organized, will have sufficient subpoena power and all. But is this really more Washington talk, or is this something that's really going to resonate with the American public?
I think once the rules, once people see the effects of these rules and they see the Republicans messing with the debt ceiling and the government shutting down, then the reality sets in. Up until then, it's all such inside baseball.
More will be revealed. I mean, that's kind of my answer for a lot of things, but we have to see what the effects of it actually are. Debt ceiling sounds like it just, to somebody who doesn't know what it is, it sounds good. Oh, we're going to stop this because we don't want any more debt in the federal government. But they don't understand how complicated it is to, run the largest nation in the world, at least the power of the purse. And so they end up with stuff like, we need to go start with zero budgeting and all this other stuff. And it just doesn't work. So we'll find out.
Well, I'm waiting to hear a statement from the former Fed chairman, George Santos, because I think he understands the issue of the debt limit better than anybody in Washington. So
that's a Shonda. That guy's a Shonda.
I think for him alone, there needs to be the resurrection of the show "What's My Line?"
Yeah,
or to tell the truth. It would be wonderful to have that. Well, closer to home, here in Michigan, we have issues over in Ottawa County with what has been the reconfiguration. I know that sigh from Nancy shows that there is a continuing trespass in her head about how badly things are there, but fear not, because it looks like citizens are uniting and unionizing, if you will, to try to fight back against the newly elected or appointed county commissioners. What is going on, Jeff, in Ottawa County?
I can't claim any special insight. I'm a former Republican, but it's no longer my circus, no longer my monkeys. What we're seeing there, though, is a bit scary about the future of the Republican Party. And the Republican Party in Michigan controls so many local county commissions. Of the 83 counties, I think they control something like more than 70. And the one thing that the Trump people, the America First MAGA people, have been able to do is infiltrate the party right down to the precinct grassroots level, like these county commissioners and school boards. And they're unserious people who live in a different reality. I mean, they see themselves as the saviors of democracy, whether it's their book bans or they're taking over the county, firing competent leadership, appointing this nincompoop John Gibbs to run the county, so that they can prevent CRT and people from eating babies at pizza shops. They see that as like some kind of reality, and they seem crazy to the rest of us. The majority of people who are normal and sane, but there's a lot of them out there, and Ottawa County is just the tip of the iceberg.
Once again, I have to absolutely agree with Jeff, but I want to emphasize something else, and this is something a friend of mine used to say about Republicans as far back as the 80s, and he said they play a long game. We forget, how do people get in the state legislature? Well, obviously, we've just recently had this crop of candidates who think that you don't need any experience to serve at the state level, and you end up with like Tudor Dixon. But traditionally, the way people made it to the state legislature is they would start as, say, a city councilman, and then maybe they would, or a school board, and then they would kind of bump up to a county commission, and then, as their name got around and people figured out who they were and got familiar with them, then they might think of running for a state legislative position, and then, from there, work your way on up. It's important for Democrats to play the same game because it's a winning game. And I think that it takes longer, but it's a slow and steady approach that I think can really pay off. And we're seeing it now with the move toward school boards. I mean, I live in Grosse Pointe. I thought when I moved here that I was moving in with a bunch of Mitt Romney Republicans, but we have a school board now that is heavily weighted to the right, and it's got one real loon on it and a couple of others who are kind of demi-loons, and we're gonna be paying for this for the next couple of years. So I mean, I hope that whoever is kind of in charge of the bench in the Democratic Party takes a lesson from this, because what's happening in Ottawa County is, according to my friend who's a county expert, he said the west side of the county, which is the lakeshore, more affluent, that's becoming more blue. The inland part is very red. They're panicking, and this is their solution, is this Ottawa impact. And P.S., was it you, Jeff, who posted the picture of McLovin and Joe, what's his name?
It wasn't me, but I might have retweeted it.
Okay.
But it was pretty darn funny.
It was
he
very
does
funny.
Look like that guy.
Yeah, it's
super bad.
What's his name? Joe somebody, Moss?
Yeah, I
Joseph
can't remember
Moss,
his last name.
the new kind of the head MF in charge over there on the county commission is a dead ringer for McLovin, although McLovin generally had a stronger chin. But anyway, go ahead.
So yesterday, I think the University of Michigan it might have been at the Ford School for Public Policy. I'm sorry I missed it, but Andy Levin and Pete Meyer on a panel talking about the future of democracy. Both of them, of course, were primaried out. In the case of Andy Levin, because he was running against Haley Stevens in Michigan 11, or was it 12? 11. Yeah. And in the case of Pete Meyer getting primaried by the new Ottawa County Commissioner, John Gibbs. I so regret missing that. But I find it interesting because in many ways it reflects what you're talking about regarding the changing tide. That here are a couple of people who, on paper, certainly would look like very good representatives of the state of Michigan and Washington, but are now resigned to having to sit on panels at U of M instead.
Although reason,
but I don't know if I could jump in on this one.
Yeah.
I think that they're also playing the long game, right? I think that sitting on panels at U of M panels, all that. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say, but sitting on panels and stuff kind of keeps you out there a little bit. You'll see them doing some interviews, and then there will be seats that come up. I mean, you can't tell me that Peter Meijer is not thinking about whether he could be a candidate for, Senator Stabenow's seat. I think they're all trying to kind of figure out like what do the tea leaves look like and what's next for them. Peter's challenge is going to be that he has to get through the Republican Party, and that's going to be where which I think is in shambles for years to come, because there's nobody to I guess feels like they can actually wrangle it and get through things. But anyhow, I think that they're trying to make sure that they stay relevant.
And are some of those same names that you mentioned, like Tudor Dixon, maybe even Karamo and maybe even DePerno, are those going to be the likely GOP forwarded candidates for the Senate spot for 24?
I think they have interest in that, but I don't think they have any.
I think Karamo and DePerno have shown themselves to be losers.
They're nuts
with a capital L.
Yeah,
but I do think,
and
this is
DePerno's going to be chair of the party.
I was just going to say, this is where I want to hear from Jeff.
Chair of the party? Is that where things? I saw that news and I was like literally like in one ear out the other because it was just so crazy.
Sorry, I spoke over you, Nancy, but I know I do think he's going to win.
You do.
So they're done. They're done. We don't have to
talk about a Shonda.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a Shonda.
I'm adding every Yiddish word you say. I add to my little list. I appreciate it.
Is Shonda Yiddish or Hebrew? Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Shonda's Yiddish. Come on, Nancy.
Okay, I didn't know. I didn't go to Hebrew school. What Jeff said about how he's going to be head of the party. This was the topic of what's his face, Nolan Finley's column yesterday in the Detroit News, and Nolan is there's a lot of stuff that Nolan has written that just drives me up a wall, but I think he has correctly seen the literal elephant in the room in the Michigan GOP, and it's the crazy wing is fully in charge, and whether or not Trump is in eclipse, they are Trumpers. They are Trumpers in they're Donald Trump with a different name. And so I think that if he is in charge of the party, that means that fundraising isn't going to recover. And who knows what it means for this open Senate seat. I think Peter Meijer would be a really difficult candidate for Democrats to beat, particularly statewide. But if he can't get past the primary,
you don't even have to think about him.
I think Matt DePerno is just carrying the torch for Trump, and I think the Republicans are starting to see. It's like an athlete who's an asshole but is winning for the team, and people say, okay, we love him even though he's a jerk. But now, with Trump, he's a jerk and he's losing. I think they're trying to find some way to sort of purge him, and Matt DePerno is sort of an extension or a proxy of.
But you know what Trump. I think, though? I think that there's a difference, though. Those folks who want to purge him are, in a lot of ways, not really Republicans anymore. They're kind of like a group of people with no party and no voice. They're like this band of conservative, values-based people who have no home. That to me is the most fascinating thing. And they wish they could come in and take over, but basically the lunatics have the wheel. Which in my opinion, yes, I am a diehard Democrat and I believe in all my people, but I also believe for democracy to work, we actually need to have an intelligent conversation on both sides.
Right.
And that's
sort of lacking, I call it. Yeah.
I think my scenario is Trump is going to get just badgered by people like DeSantis, even Chris Christie and other people, he's going to be so angry. He's not going to bow out. Even if he gets indicted, he'll somehow try to delay the trials for whatever and run and use that as a fundraising issue. And then at the end, if DeSantis gets the nomination, I think it's possible he'll say, I'm going to be an independent. And guess what, Republicans, you are dead. Yeah.
Jeff had his hand up.
Well, no, I was just, when she was describing me, people would know home. There is no evidence that anybody real and serious or anybody with power in the Republican Party is trying to purge Trump or move on from Trump. That continues to be a narrative that's advanced, but all the evidence points to the contrary. Trump continues to exert all the influence, more influence than he did even before. Trump was instrumental in getting Kevin McCarthy across the finish line last week, something acknowledged by Kevin McCarthy after he won. That was the first thing he did, was bow his knee to Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis can't lay a hand on Donald Trump in a Republican primary. And you're exactly right, though. If somehow a miracle were to happen and he were to defeat Trump in a primary, Trump is not going to say, well, Trump or DeSantis beat me fair and square, I'm supporting him. He is going to do everything he can for the rest of his life to make Ron DeSantis pay a price for it, and the Republican Party pay a price for rejecting him. So the Democrats have a win-win position. Donald Trump is going to be the nominee of the Republican Party. You can mark this tape. I'm saying it right now. But if somehow a meteor strikes and he's not, he's going to burn it down for the Democrats.
You're absolutely right. Because the thing is, the party is not interested in winning. Like, they really are not interested in electing people, right?
It's a purge.
It's just purge. Kind of like they stake their, they say, this is what I'm going to do. I mean, what we saw with Kevin McCarthy was like literally people who did not care about government, didn't care to actually allow the country to operate, right? So now we need to look at the fact that the people who've been elected don't understand the meaning of public servant. I mean,
like George Santos, who I just realized who he reminds me of. He reminds me of the blank tile in Scrabble. because he can be whatever he wants on a given day. So what about this? I've been noticing on Twitter that the one person who has been showing unrelentless, shall we even say endless love for Trump is former gubernatorial candidate in Arizona, Kari Lake. Do you think she's positioning herself to be Trump's Veep on the ticket, or if he burns out, to be the one who receives his endorsement?
She's going for the VP spot. They're two peas in a pod. They're so alike, and she said, people have described me as the female Trump. She goes, I'm proud of that.
She needs to start growing her hair out because he likes to be photographed with women with big, beachy waves. So, but yeah.
I mean, it's between him and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think he's going to go with Kari Lake.
Yeah, it's going to be a woman, I think, because I think he understands correctly that the base of this particular part of the party are people like Michonne Maddock, the crazy ladies, and he's going to have to throw him a bone somehow. By the way, Saeed, for a person who speaks in such correct English, you said something like unrelentless. So I just have to correct you on that.
I'm sorry. It was
unrelenting.
Unrelenting. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
or relentless.
Hey, Wordle.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Well, I was using my blank tile. So.
Oh, okay.
Amazing.
Well, around here, it looks like the Department of Justice was subpoenaing or issuing subpoenas. I don't want to get in trouble by making a verb out of nothing. Issuing subpoenas to the Wayne County Election Commission for records on Trump regarding the 2020 election. So it seems as though the investigation persists on that front. Do you think there's going to be a case coming out of Michigan about it?
I think it could be
I think Michigan's going to be tied to any case that comes out of this. I mean, I'm hopeful that there's going to be some accountability for the conspiracy to overthrow the government and seize power, by the president of the United States and enablers in Congress. We're getting news from Michigan, but there's also other sources around the country who've received subpoenas, people in similar positions, and so it looks like the case is slowly building. It's been kind of maddening that it's taken more than 2 years, but I've been as frustrated as anybody. But if the goal isn't just to indict Trump, it's to convict Trump. And so they've got to have an airtight case. And however long that takes is how long it takes.
I think to me, I see, well, multitude of things. Part of it is like down in Georgia, trying to figure out who else is involved. Is it Rudy Giuliani? Is it Mark Meadows? I think, but at some point, and having covered federal law enforcement for decades, you have to sort of, and it's like working on a story. At some point, you got to sort of close it up and decide, okay, this is what we can do. Because, these are cases you could work on for years and years and years. And the other thing is, they can indict and then they can come back with the superseding indictment and say, oh, yeah, by the way, Rudy Giuliani, yeah, we've got enough evidence now. Here's a superseding indictment. Here's a double, triple superseding indictment. You can do that. But at some point, they have to kind of bring it home and start laying down some indictments, because they can't go on. These are things, 5-year investigations easily. And the FBI is used to doing those long investigations, but the American people want to see some resolution one way or another.
And then we're going to be in this weird situation where the nominee for the GOP is actually for president is actually going to be, under indictment by the federal government that he seeks to lead. It truly, talk about uncharted territory.
The only thing I think is that some of this has the potential to backfire on us in terms of leaving this case open for a long time. If he gets, and I say us meaning like Democrats, but I think leaving it open a long time is an issue. And then even, I guess you could charge, you could do all these things. I feel like the country's so ready to move on. I feel so ready to move on from talking about the past while we've got so many pressing issues for the future, right?
Yeah.
And I do also get those who say that, when you consider the future of democracy, we've got to really go after these issues, which yes, I agree. I guess I'm feeling exhausted from the conversation. And I just wonder if other people are feeling like I am.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm feeling exhausted, and I get it. But if we don't have accountability, if there's no guardrails, if a president can do anything and get away with it, somebody in the future is not going to be as incompetent and stupid as Trump, and they're going to succeed. There has to be a price to pay, and we have to go through, however exhausting it is, we have to go through it in order to ensure that we can have stability in the future. Because if there is no price to pay for attempting to overthrow the government, then there's no price to pay for anything.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great point.
I think we're seeing it's interesting, the movement we're seeing all over the world now, the Trumpian values spreading all, in South America. We're seeing it in Israel. We're seeing there's close to a civil war in Israel over, Netanyahu's coalition trying to change the Supreme Court so that the Knesset can overrule and basically throw out his criminal charges. We're seeing democracy all around the world. And I think Trump sort of set the template for trying to, challenge the strength of democracy.
Well, that's why some countries are fighting so hard to retain their monarchies from all threats, foreign or domestic.
I'm so interested to hear what you think about that book.
When I read it, I'll let you know. I just got it, so yeah, absolutely.
I'm so excited to read it. I actually love Harry, and I love Meghan Markle. But I'm a little bit the documentary, it was just a little bit much for me. But I am, typically team Meghan, team Harry.
I've watched Suits. I've watched the show Suits, and that was the first time I saw her act. And I thought she was very good. I thought she was very talented.
I told you guys she went to Northwestern, and we were there at the same time. And she lived in the sorority quad across from where I lived. And she's from Los Angeles. I'm from Los Angeles. And where I went for Immaculate Heart, where I went for junior highs, where she went for high school.
Wow.
How far apart in age are you?
I feel like we're in the presence of royalty.
3 years. She's older.
Okay.
But because I know she was in class with a friend of mine's ex-boyfriend.
Okay. The Harry and Meghan story is, and I'm generally a person who pays attention to the British royal family, but it's too American for me. I don't want to hear about their hurt feelings and everything else. And this is a lesson in something that a friend of mine told me that I needed to get used to as I get older, and that is the concept of it's not for you. Okay, it's not for you. That's just not a story that you have to care about. And so I really kind of feel like that is one of them. So
it has made me dislike William and Kate very much. I don't like any of them anymore. I think that they're like outside of, I'm like so anti them now. And Camilla and like all of them. I think this has been really damaging to their image and what people think about them moving forward.
More so than the rumor about how William was supposedly having an affair with the Duchess of Cholmondeley, and that Kate knew about it. I'm sorry, which one was it?
It is pronounced Cholmondeley. Very good, even though it looks like Cholmondeley.
Cholmondeley, exactly. It was Cholmondeley and the Cholmondeley. Yeah, Cholmondeley is one of those weird things. And and Kate knew and excused it because apparently Williams likes to be paddled, and maybe.
Where did that come from?
No. Actually, he likes.
And she doesn't want to do that.
Is there a paragraph about that in Harry's book?
No. It's not in Harry's book.
Let me look in the index under pegging.
William likes to be paddled.
No, not paddled, pegged.
Pegged. I read this somewhere. It was paddled or pegged, something like this.
It's pegged.
But he's into something that she's not into, and she's fine to delegate. Like a good royal, she's totally cool with delegating that job to staff.
I'm gonna have to look up what pegging is.
Yeah,
you don't want to Google that.
Yeah. I mean, I think
be very careful.
Okay.
At least turn the images part off. Okay.
I'm the guy who brought up genital cuffs, so I guess I've got nothing to complain about here. So.
Along with the Yiddish dictionary, I think the Urban Dictionary is our other source of reference here at the week that was. So, Allan, I know that you are a big supporter of all things Detroit, and I think you have a video clip.
Last night, there was another magic moment when the Detroit Lions knocked the Packers out of the playoffs. Running back Jamal Williams. Lions fans or just hate the Packers? Which is it? So Jamal Williams set a Lions record for most touchdowns rushing in the season, and after the game, he was both emotional and hilarious.
There's a lot of memories, a lot of emotion happening right now, but I'm just grateful. I'm grateful to be able to play this game for my great-grandfather, and I'm glad that he's looking down on me. I know I'm making him proud.
You said this ball's for him?
Yeah, this is for him. And the other thing, stop playing us, man. We the Detroit Lions. We the Detroit Lions. Stop playing with us. I don't even watch TV, but I heard everybody already picked the Packers over us. Stop playing with us. That's all I gotta say, man. Don't let these tears fool you. There's all dog around this mud.
Detroit represent. Now, Nancy,
yes.
I would suspect that he was too effusive for you.
I mean, no, not at all. This is a new thing. I was in the avalanche of news about the guy. What's his name? The guy who was hurt at the Buffalo Bills guy. Hamlin.
Hamlin, yeah.
Yeah. There was an interesting think piece, a chin stroker, about the changing NFL in terms of like its macho image. And they were saying that, there were players who were weeping and praying, when they were working on him on the field, and that this is a healthy thing. And it's, it was chalked up to kind of a general softening of intolerant attitudes toward male tears and male emotion that isn't, And it was kind of nice that he showed both of them in that one clip there.
Well, apparently next year they've already voted that the new commissioner is going to be Alan Alda, and they are switching to flag football. So, Nancy, I think you might be onto something as far as a much more sensitive NFL.
Although I think tiers is not something so new, because I remember in 7th grade basketball, we played Hazel Park Junior High School, and it was, our team was, were blacks and frats, and then there were the greasers at Hazel Park, and they beat us. And at the end of the game, we'd get back on the bus, and there were about 5 black players who were they called the Peyton Boys, who did Temptation songs in the back, and we would all clap and sing along. And we had lost the game. The coach started screaming at us, "How dare you! You guys should be crying, not." So I think
How long ago were you in 7th grade, though?
Wow, what was that? That was 15 years ago.
And were the Temptations at the top of the charts back then?
Yes.
All I know is if you played the Greasers, please tell me there was somebody on the other team named Pony Boy.
Oh boy, I tell you, the Greasers. We walked through the school we were carrying our own basketballs for practice before the game, and the Greasers were taking their fists and banging it out of our hands.
Wow.
They were messing with us. Yes.
The Hazel Park Greasers.
The Hazel Park Greasers.
Right.
That's so amazing. Did they wear wait, your team was called the Greasers?
No. They were the Greasers. They were the Greasers. They had the slick back hair, the leather jackets and the slick back hair and the black pants and the boots, and they were all just messing with us.
Is it Aren't we just talking about Grease?
I'm sorry.
Well, Alexis, they actually had to change the name because Greaser proved to be too offensive. So so now they're the Hazel Park Parkettes.
Yeah.
Parkettes. Okay.
So in a neighboring enclave of Hazel Park, we have Hamtramck, which is home to the nation's only all-Muslim city council. Well, this week they made headlines yet again by passing an ordinance allowing animal sacrifice within city limits. There are 2 conditions to this. One is people have to register that they're going to be doing so and also subject themselves to daily inspection. It looks like Hamtramck has bypassed medical animal sacrifice and moved strictly to fully legal animal sacrifice, to use the marijuana dispensary analogy of the situation.
Saeed, as the panel's official spokesman for Islam, how common is, because I was reading this and I loved that story so hard. I love Detroit. I love Metro Detroit. Everything that happens here is interesting, funny, appalling. It's just never boring. But I want to ask you, they said that for this particular Eid al-something.
Eid al-Adha.
Which translates to the Festival of Sacrifices. They say that a family may sacrifice a goat, sheep, cow, or camel.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
How often does this actually happen? I can see a goat. I'm less enthused about a sheep, but I can't imagine you could do a home slaughter of a cow or a camel. I mean, where is the slaughtering happening, and how is it done?
So were you expecting a pickup truck full of Libyans with a rocket-propelled grenade launcher going to the Detroit Zoo during Eid al-Adha and saying, this is, we're rolling now?
That's so funny.
I don't know. How does this work?
So how it works is that there is it is highly recommended. Some would interpret it as actually being an obligation that the head of household should sacrifice a goat or an animal in order to then do 3 things, because there are different rights that people have over the meat of the animal.
Yeah.
Your own family, the poor, and community, meaning friends and extended family. Right. So people will go ahead, if they can, in order to maintain the full level of authenticity. Mind you, this does happen in places farther out of field, like the beloved Thumb region of Michigan. Sometimes Muslims will go and they will speak to a farmer and ask if they would be permitted to purchase said animal and then go ahead and sacrifice it according to Islamic rites, which aren't too dissimilar to kashrut rites of sacrifice. As far as the cow and the camel go, that has to do if more people than just one family want to go into it.
Okay.
Usually 7 families go into a cow and 7 go into a camel. It is not very common around here. And frankly, even in majority Muslim countries, usually this is subcontracted or outsourced to some other people, and then the meat is distributed accordingly. It's more sort of a kind of now become a cultural tradition more than anything else. I think in this case, it was seeking permission for people to be able to do it in their own homes. More than after all, we do have
big houses in Hamtramck. You just take that goat down to the basement, and I don't know. Given that they've never found Jimmy Hoffa, I think that a goat is far smaller and probably far less messy. So, okay.
But I found it kind of interesting that first of all, Islamically prepared or slaughtered animals are happening every single day.
It's very similar to kashrut, like you said. In fact,
exactly.
my Orthodox friend in Fort Wayne, Indiana, that's where she would get her meat from. There were more halal butchers in Fort Wayne than there were kosher butchers, and that's where she would get her meat because she said the rules are almost the same. So
yeah, what the rationale is that you slaughter the animal by cutting both major blood vessels and the windpipe in one fell swoop,
right?
And it allows most of the, most of the blood to drain out of the meat. Is then providing for cleaner meat to occur. But this is bringing the abattoir into a more personal and individualistic basis than having the mega organizations.
Right. Yeah. And to respond to our commenters here, I don't, I've seen or I've heard, I've never seen a live animal sacrifice, but I've read enough about how it's accomplished in, by these kashrut or halal rules. And it sounds like it's less inhumane than, say, commercial slaughter. And as long as a person who eats meat, I don't feel like I have a moral leg to stand
I think anybody who reads Upton Sinclair's The Jungle will certainly get freaked out by it. Or actually, yeah, go ahead.
I worked at a pig slaughterhouse in the packing part, but I would occasionally go over to the kill place, and it was pretty brutal. I mean, they would shock the pig, they'd put the clamps on the hind legs, then it would get hoisted up. Then some guy would take like a long pole, a pointed pole, and right through the neck. And then like a minute later, some guy would take a bandsaw and just go right down the middle.
Right. And pigs,
7,500 hogs a day at that place.
Pigs are very intelligent animals. I mean, they're as smart as dogs. And, that is the one meat that I wish it didn't taste so good. I wish bacon wasn't so delicious because it's the one meat that I feel a little bit of guilt over eating.
Routinely,
Me too.
Michigan is a big hunting state. You go out deer hunting, for example, and if you don't get a kill shot, you pretty much have to dispatch the animal in the field anyways.
Right.
So
my old colleague Mike Dawson said, I shot it in the shit sack, so I had to trace it, track it down and blah blah blah. It's like, ooh. Okay. So anyway.
We're going to have some of these people on the show. I mean, because we need to put face to name to story. So I don't know, Alan, maybe you can rustle up some old greasers and
get the Buddy Fenster. The first time I met Buddy Fenster after hearing 1,000 stories about him, I felt like I knew him already. So anyway.
Well, moving on to some more Yiddish, given how... go ahead, Alexis.
All right, before you get to the next topic, I have to hop. I'm out here in LA and have a number of different things I have to get to, but this has been a really fun conversation.
All right.
You know, I always
Thanks
try
for
to
doing
get
it.
out before I've got to choose my schmuck or my putts.
Because you're such an optimistic person and always look on the bright side.
Do you
right?
have someone?
Do you have someone? Yeah.
Hey, Kat, no, I'm like literally, I'm looking at the beach. I'm happy right now. I can't choose anybody. A lot of love
The
today.
world's good. All's good in the world.
Okay.
World's good. I'm
Wow.
happy.
Alexis even loves George Santos. You heard it here first. So
Yeah.
okay.
Enjoy the
thanks-
sunshine.
Thanks for joining us from LA. Stay dry out there.
I will. I'll see you guys soon.
All right.
Okay.
Have a
Take
good
care,
one.
Alexis.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, Alan. Then it's cue to you.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
There you
Good old
go.
Robert. Yeah.
Okay, Jeff, you have to participate in our very storied tradition here of naming a schmuck for the week.
Well, I think I've done this before, but this week I would say it goes to he of the genital cuff, Kevin McCarthy.
Okay. Reason being?
Well, the reason being that he had to sell every last bit of his very small amount of integrity and character in order to get the title of speaker, but without any power that comes with it.
Right. The big office, the big gavel, and it's an empty prize.
And selling out democracy and the rule of law in the process.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, Nancy.
I am going to go with a gentleman that I just learned about today, Andrew Weaver, who is a trustee of, I believe, your home school district, Saeed. I think your kids are all pretty much free of it now, aren't they?
We're talking Rochester Community Schools?
Rochester Community Schools. Yes, exactly. Apparently, there was a field trip for middle schoolers, sixth graders, to see the Detroit Symphony. And then they had a prepaid, prearranged reservation at a Greektown pizzeria called, I believe, Nikki's Pizza.
Nikki's Pizza.
Nikki's Pizza. And when they arrived, they could not accommodate them in the main dining room. And so they took them into the adjacent Nikki's Lounge, which apparently has stripper poles in it. And I'm not sure why it has stripper poles in it.
It has poles, which I believe are multi-purpose, but go on.
Okay, well, they all right. So I don't know if Nikki's Lounge is an after-hours, stripping place or whatever, but it was. They have poles. They have poles, and after the kids ate their pizza, a few of them got up and began to play on the poles the way 12-year-olds will do, and some of them were swinging around in a stripper kind of way. And this new trustee, Andrew Weaver, blew a gasket over this. And it was oh, the children, ignoring the fact that by the time how old is the sixth grader? About 12? By 12? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They already have seen 1,000 PG-13 movies that feature, women swinging around on poles, usually in a bikini. That's what makes it PG-13. And the idea that this was some corrupting influence on them is simply absurd, but he made a federal case out of it. And guess who's picked it up now? Fox News, and it's going to go national and reflect badly on what is otherwise a fine suburban district. And what were they supposed to do with these kids? I mean, they had prepaid for the meal. I mean, what do you do in that case?
So I guess right now, if any of you are interested in showing up here with tiki torches and pitchforks when Tucker Carlson is going to be inevitably reporting here in Rochester, let me know so I can put on the coffee percolator.
Right, exactly. So anyway, Andrew Weaver, he's my schmuck. So,
I mean, what about the idea that people want to think that they're firefighters by sliding up and down a pole? I mean, there is that as well. So
I know.
Okay, Alan.
I've got a couple. Benjamin Netanyahu for forming an alliance with a coalition, a racist, bigoted coalition that potentially could cause really more than a rift in Israel, but potentially a civil war. But we'll see.
Are you talking about the Republican Party?
Yeah. One and the same. Yeah. And then, well, it's very similar because McCarthy's had to acquiesce to all these crazies, and Netanyahu has had to do the same thing. I mean, right from the very beginning, even before he was installed, one of the religious zealots who's part of this coalition said, "That's it for gay parades in Israel." And Netanyahu had to come out and say, no, we're still going to have them. Don't listen to that guy. So the other thing is the Detroit Pistons. They are playing so poorly. They lost the other night 147 to 116, which is just outrageous that any team would. They're doing horrible. The coach, and the thing is, nobody cares. Nobody
in the great
talks
tradition of Detroit professional sports.
Yeah, nobody cares. Nobody. I mean, at least the Lions fans will be like, "We need to fire this person. We need to get rid of the GM." Nobody. Dwayne Casey's been there for 5 years now. It's only gone the wrong direction, and nobody's even said fire Dwayne Casey because they don't care. That's how bad that franchise has become.
Team's just not the same since the Davidson sold it.
Yeah. It's definitely a different different ballgame.
Yeah, he's obviously just doing it for the ringside seats.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Gores is living in California. I mean, Davidson was at courtside every game.
Which by the way isn't a disqualifier after all. Alexis lives in LA, so just saying. So this isn't my schmuck, but I just thought I'd mention it. Apparently, there's going to be the world premiere next month in Berlin of a biopic on Golda Meir with Helen Mirren starring.
Wow.
But I'm thinking that the budget was probably so low that it's actually just Helen Mirren as the queen with a Yiddish accent overdubbed it, which would be such a better movie.
Right. Wow. I like that.
Okay. Well, my schmuck of the week is Mr. Shankar Mishra. A former vice president at Wells Fargo in Mumbai, India. Last week, Mr. Mishra was flying on Air India from New York JFK to New Delhi in business class, and apparently was so inebriated that he urinated on a female passenger and exposed his genital cap without the cap. Not only that, he evaded arrest. They finally tracked him down in Bangalore, apprehended him, and threw him in jail for 14 days pending an investigation. And he could potentially, if convicted, serve up to 3 years in prison. Excuse me. Air India had not even notified the police when they landed in Delhi. They're like, eh. And it only acted after the female passenger's family launched and lodged a complaint, mostly on social media. How did Air India respond? Mr. Mishra has been banned from flying the airline for 30 days.
30 days? Oh my God.
2 weeks of which apparently he's in the clink, so it's not like he can fly anywhere.
I have to say, I give him credit, though, for airing out the time-honored excuse for that sort of behavior, which is, I was drunk.
Yeah, and apparently it's a thing because last month on an Air India flight from Paris to New Delhi, a passenger urinated on a vacant seat and also on the blanket of another passenger.
Wow.
Now, having flown Air India many years ago, if I were representing Mr. Mishra in court, I would say he actually didn't have much of a choice because urinating on the passenger is still preferable to going to the toilet on one of these aircraft, which are usually rendered almost unusable about 90 minutes after taking off.
Right.
So, but what an odious individual. And I suppose Air India deserves to co-schmuck it with him for their really terrible reaction and response. And we thought Southwest Airlines was a shanda, but Shankar Mishra fired from Wells Fargo because of this incident.
No doubt.
I guess Wells Fargo doesn't like any of its employees imitating R. Kelly. You're my schmuck of the week.
All right.
So,
all righty.
There we go. Well, Alexis, Wiley, I know you had to leave us, but thank you for being on. Jeff Timmer, thank you. Nancy Derringer, thank you. And Allan, of course, thank you. And with the last word,
drive home safely.
All right. Have a great